Joining us from Buenos Aires is a political researcher, Tobias Belgrano, who has been following Milei's economic transformation and its global implications, and will talk to us more about it. So, Tobias, let's first off start by asking, why do you think Washington chose to back Milei's exchange rate experiment, despite the very high risk it poses to Argentina's long record of failed currency pegs?
Well, first of all, the U.S. has had only small interventions yet, only in the Argentine market, buying pesos, the Argentinian currency, but yet hasn't transferred the swap to the libertarian administration. The whole idea is based in a geopolitical stance where the U.S. is trying to support its only ally in the region, because we gotta remember that mainly almost all the governments in the region and in the big countries are center left or leftist government, which are perceived as hostile to the Trump administration. So this economic help comes and financial help comes with a geopolitical stance, but at the same time, as Financial Times is saying, there are many investors and U.S. investors which are allied to the current Argentinian administration and are intending to keep their income and their investments going up, keep them going up. So that's partially why, because many of those investors are friends of the Trump
So,
administration. Yeah,
they're not
sorry.
just aligned on the political aspirations or aspects when it comes to how they view the world, whether it be Milei or Trump, but you're also saying that there's financial dealings as well, whereby American companies or business owners will get some sort of trade investments within Argentina as well.
Well, those are the trade agreements. So we gotta separate things just for a moment. We have the financial investors, which are investing in Argentina, and are short-term investors in Argentinian bonds and debt bonds from Argentina. Those are quite interested that the country is able to meet its debts in January this year, and those are the ones who are more politically aligned. The current libertarian administration in Argentina is right now saying that there's the possibility of a commercial agreement between a free trade agreement between the US and Argentina, which really doesn't make much sense because Argentina and the US are competitive economies rather than complementary economies. Right now, Argentina is much more complementary in its exports to China than to the US.
So, also, some see that the 20 billion US dollar credit line is an attempt to basically buy the geopolitical loyalty, given what you just said, that they're not necessarily aligned when it comes to trade and finance. How much of this decision is based purely on politics or economic reasons?
No, mainly I would say it's based in political reasons, and it's the alliance of Javier Milei with Mr. Trump. Also, there's a message that Donald Trump is trying to send to the region that being an ally of Donald Trump pays out, and Donald Trump will pay out Milei's loyalty or Argentinian government's loyalty to the U.S. rather than the situation with Lula da Silva that has been a little bit hostile to the U.S. administration, despite some recent words of Trump in the UN for Lula da Silva. I think the idea is to show the region that being an ally from the U.S. is something that the U.S. will pay out.
Mm-hmm. Well, the Financial Times described Milei's partnership with Vicente as what they call a gamble dressed as strategy. Do you see any logic behind maintaining an artificially strong peso? And do you agree with the statement that the Financial Times gave there about it being a gamble?
Yeah, of course, I do agree that it's a risky gamble for the U.S. administration. We've seen also the problems that the U.S. internally had with this for example, with the farmers, which are generally Trump supporters and which are very angry because the U.S. it's subsidizing the Argentinian currency. But also, it doesn't work even in the industrially or commercially because the U.S. is is trying to keep the Argentinian peso appreciated and prevents its devaluation. However, that currency appreciation is just making the Argentinians consume even more and more and more Chinese goods, import even more Chinese goods. The swap agreement, if it was to take away China from the region, it should include some kind of import tariffs to the Chinese goods, which are flowing and invading the entire country. The only country that was really benefited by the liberalization of the Argentinian market and in the imports market in Argentina was China, not the U.S. Chinese apps especially of clothes, are invading the market and are making Argentinian companies shut down because of the cost and the
Yes.
dumping that China does.
Well, which kind of brings on the next idea here. You said that the main beneficiary here is the Chinese. Do you think that the policy that the US is using right now of basically strong arming certain countries or trying to prop up this person or that economy works, or is the Chinese model of making things cheaper and producing more a better solution to invading or disseminating their products within different markets?
So I don't think that this strategy is working. I think that there's a big ignorance, diplomatically speaking, of some parts of the Trump administration regarding Argentinian economy. So I don't think that this strategy is gonna work, at least in the idea of keeping China away from the region, unless there's a import tariffs against Chinese goods. And that's not even possible because China would react with hostility to Argentinian exports, like the soybean, which is the main export of Argentina to China, and that would affect the capability of Argentina of repaying its debts if China acts hostilely against the main Argentinian export.
Okay, if we could talk about the volatility when it comes to the reserves as well as the inflation that remains quite volatile as well. How sustainable is the policy of propping up the peso beyond the October 26th congressional elections?
At least the rumor in the country is that the peso won't be revalued. Everyone acts with the preventive measure that there's going to be a currency devaluation after the elections, mainly because the government, as Trump tied up the election result to the possibility of helping the government, the general perception is that the government is going to have a poor election in October 26th. So the general sensation is that despite what Trump says or of what Scott Bessent says, the currency is going to be devalued because the government cannot sustain that currency. The current currency exchange, despite the U.S. helps out. It's not competitive, and it's not possible for the Argentinian economy to accumulate reserves to pay its debts with this currency exchange rate.
If we can go back to the idea of America trying to counter Chinese influence within Latin America, Trump has said that basically they're supporting these countries through financial gestures, which doesn't truly actually come to light. Given the set of things that have been happening in Latin America recently, do you think that this is truly a new Monroe Doctrine, or just symbolism and flash and pomp when it comes to the Trump administration?
Well, yes, I would say, more like a Monroe Doctrine. I would call it more like Reaganomics, or Reagan diplomacy, more similar to that, like Reagan supporting, like in the 80s when Reagan supported right-wing administration or even dictatorships. I mean, there's no problem in supporting because the idea of the U.S. diplomacy is that they are have last. It's a very Republican approach to Latin America. In general, when the Republicans try to enhance their strength in the region, they have a common enemy and they divide the world in that enemy. With Reagan, it was communism. With Bush, was the war on terror, and now it's the war against China. So with the allies are divided in the ones who are supporting China, the ones who are against China. And Milei is one of the, at least verbally, has called the U.S. as its main ally and not the Chinese.
Well, as you said there, that usually the Americans use the common enemy sort of approach when it comes to dealing with things. Like now they're trying to counter China, but also doesn't this come at a cost for the person or the country that is the in-between the other? like the Latin American countries in the 80s, as you said, he supported fascism. Um, does this not directly affect Latin American countries, including Argentina?
Yeah, of course. Right now, the Trump administration is trying to push the carrot and stick diplomacy. I mean, generally has been a lot of sticks. We have the recent case, even in the Biden administration, we had this case of the carrot and the stick of not supporting China with the 5G in Chile, for example, that Chile was intending to have 5G technology, and the US was saying, no, you shouldn't have that technology because it's gonna cause a security clearances from the Chinese because they are spying on you. However, that prevents the development of the countries of Latin America, technologically speaking. So, yeah, there's a common approach with the Biden and the Trump administration. However, the Trump administration is much more direct
Yeah, this
and
will affect these
go
countries
to action.
for decades to come, right? Am I correct in believing this all?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
The effects of these conditions that the Trump administration is putting on Latin America will affect them for decades to come. Am I correct?
Yeah, I would say that would depend on how long the U.S. sustains this diplomacy of the carrot and the stick and this common enemy against China. I would say that would depend because if the U.S. It's a little bit more flexible in future administration, that would change a lot how the countries in Latin America react.
Okay, our final question here. What conditions would you set for Argentina's recovery, and what role should Washington play if it genuinely wants to create a stable partner within the region?
Well, at least I would say that the diplomacy should include a less financial approach and a more real investment approach for industries and Argentinian industries. If Argentina wants to develop and be able to accumulate capital, we need real foreign investment and not financial investment because the problem with financial investments in Argentina is it's really short term and the investors fly away to quality as soon as they can, which in the end of the day leaves a country with a lot of volatility and a lot of currency volatility because every time the foreigners that invest go out or go to the flight to quality, they sell a lot of pesos in the economy and that generates more inflation. So that's part of the general problem of the country. We need more real financing. And if the idea of the U.S. is to have a supporter against China, we need investment that allows us not to import goods from China.